as you come into the space, if you'd say hi, open your chat and click the second item down on the drop-down menu that says panelists and attendees, and tell us who you are and where you're joining from. I'm Kathy, and I'm joining from Wadsworth, Illinois. Andrew's from Minnesota. We'll introduce our presenter in a few minutes. In about 30 seconds. Hi, Anna. Welcome back. Who else do we have with us today? See some new names. Hi, Luan. Nice to see you. Sandra's here. Hi, Sandra. Great. It's 12 o'clock, and Andrew, thank you for having our backs on this and advancing the tech. Really appreciate you. And I'm here today with Ruben Mahboobi for the last installment this time around of holistic protection, and our topic in sync with our month of is spiritual vitality in the context of grief, trauma, and loss. Hi, Rochelle. Hi, Britta. So just a few housekeeping tips. Thank you for being here, Ruben. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So just a couple of housekeeping tips. The first one is the ways to engage. The primary way to engage is the chat. You're already using it. It's open to you throughout the webinar to ask questions, to talk to each other, to say aho or affirm what you're hearing. So please feel free to use the chat liberally. And the other way to engage is to raise your hand. If you raise your hand, Andrew will unmute you, and then you'll need to unmute yourself, and then you will be able to speak. And then secondly, we have agreements. Be Strong Families has agreements for everything we do in recognition that we co-create this safe space together. So if you can agree to abide by these agreements for this hour, to speak from your own experience, to treat others as you want to be treated, to be here now, and if you need a minute, take a minute, please type I agree in the chat. Like Anna did, like Andrew did, like Joey did. Hi, Joey. Welcome. Britta, Mary. Awesome. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to get started, and I'm going to introduce you to Ruben Mahboobi, who is a spiritual advisor, yoga teacher, and trainer for more than 30 years. You can see his accreditations and certifications in the second bullet. He's also a dignitary and executive protection specialist, and the innovator, the creator, really, the father of the field of holistic protection. So we're delighted and honored to have you here as a guest and as a presenter, Ruby, and just want to say thank you and
thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you, Be Strong Families, Andrew, and of course, Kathy. You all doing this work is divine work, and it's important work. And as always, a pleasure to be here this day, especially as, you know, things are beginning to open up in the world, you know, as far as the, you know, with COVID and these types of things. So, you know, thank you again for everyone who's taking their time out of their day to be here. This topic that we're about to cover today is a very personal, and it's a very difficult topic for many. And my point is merely to give you a moment to take another look or an approach at how we approach these topics, such as death or grief, and these things. And it's a very personal experience. And so everyone's experiences are valid and important as we journey in this physical realm, this life, and how we can do this. So if you get anything out of today's talk, that's a very beautiful thing. And to, definitely, it's going to probably provoke some very intimate and emotional parts of our discussion today. So looks
And
like
these
you've got
are the
some things
ones
coming up.
through the webinars that Ruby's done before. And I encourage you, if you like today, you might want, and you haven't seen the other ones, they're available on Be Strong Family's website and our YouTube channel. And it's all juicy, all important, all helpful for keeping your family strong. So thank you. Next slide, Andrew.
So this is like, again, we have lots to cover in a very short amount of time. And I always say I like laughing, because, crying and laughing are very important, things to do, exercises to do as well. But when we start talking about these topics of grief, trauma, loss, and death, it obviously, we all are going to experience it. So it's something that we can all get with and talk about. It's a good conversation, and we should not be afraid to address it. Most of us are very uncomfortable with talking about these certain issues. There's taboo. It's a form of weakness and sadness in our society. That people think that when you have these things, or when you have grief or loss or trauma, it's a sign of weakness, when in actuality it's actually the most strong. It takes a lot of strength in order to meet these and deal with these. And then if we can do that and begin to learn to communicate effectively with each other, and be open and vulnerable, which is strength, we will begin to have this true intimacy, which I define also as intimacy, right? Allowing yourself to be seen, allowing yourself to experience, and allowing yourself to feel. Somehow in our society, we have gotten to a place where if we began to start feelings, and we're in our feelings, or we're in this, and it's okay. Everything with maturity has a time and a place. And so once we use that effectively, we can begin to see how these topics and these feelings of grief and trauma and loss. But my approach from a protection point of view is to safeguard the nerves, is to really get you well in a way to receive and experience. This year I have lost my mother personally in the last few months, my uncle, friends, it's so death is the more the joke in a lot of the spirit communities, the more friends you have, the more death and weddings you're going to be going to. So the idea is that we must be at peace with this experience. But the idea is that if you see here, there are the signs that we have here. And what I'd like to address is, it's working from a polarity, okay? So yes, there are other ways to address this thing, but we're simply just going to look at it from a polarity. And the idea is that in this polarity, we look at these realms, and we've got to kind of realize where people are coming from when they're speaking. So there is a physical realm, and then there's the spiritual realm. And in the physical realm is where we as humans experience these feelings and experience all this, even experiencing itself, such as life exists in the physical realm. I think we can all understand and get behind that. And that's where grief comes from. That's where the trauma comes from, the wounds, right? Loss, these ideas of loss. And basically, they're in death, okay? And this is where we're going to begin to go trauma. We're going to get really into it right away. And that most of these things we have to realize, and I'm sure we've heard this before, but for many people in the spiritual communities, as things that are illusion based, or things that are story based, things that are fiction, okay? Things that are, we're very much into a lot of these things. So, but we do not want to discount or discard. So please, that is not the intention. The idea is just to make sure that we understand that when we look at loss, for instance, we're going to start with loss, okay? I am actually very comfortable in loss, Okay. Okay. I'm the first one to ask for directions. Isn't it interesting how people are afraid to ask for directions? When they are so-called lost. All right. Well, there you go. So I happen to celebrate loss because we won't, how exciting it is, and it's okay to be excited from time to time, right? When you're found. Okay. So in order, we celebrate the found, but we don't celebrate the loss. Are you getting me here? It's like, you must, because of anxiety, right? Because of fear, because of the unknown. So the idea is that we need to become more familiar, and that's very interesting because it's kind of a paradox in that, to become familiar with the unknown, right? It's kind of a funny thing, but the reality is that we want to be able to start to talk about these things and experience and be okay with not knowing. Many of us consciously are always trying to know something. And so this is a very ego-based and a very difficult place to go and to be. One of my gurus and teachers would say it's very difficult to fill a cup that is already full. So then we have to begin to learn to empty ourselves. And in that emptiness is what we consider, or what, probably lay people would be considered lost, because we don't have that destination in mind. And then when that destination is not secured or is not tangible, okay, we can become quite, panicked, led astray, because we're humans, and humans need structure. We need discipline, and we need these practices, and to be able to feel alive and vital in this world. We'll be talking about that a little later in this talk. Death is permanent. Okay, this is another construct again in the physical realm that we have, which is very. I have a very later in the slide. We're going to talk more about death, more or in a few more seconds about death. But the idea is that we have to realize in the physical realm there is a beginning and an end. Okay, yes, in the physical realm, there's a beginning and the end. Now we go over to the spiritual realm. The idea is that it's infinite or eternal, okay, that there is no beginning or an end. So just to give you an idea of these polarities is basically speaking about a physical death, and then there's a spiritual death, which is not possible because there is no end and there is no beginning, that we as energy beings are eternal. So, Kathy, you're going to say yes?
Spiritual realm, right?
What's that?
Is that would mean that there's no time in the spiritual realm.
Time is man's physical predator, and it's like something that is very fascinating. Yeah, it's definitely it's a physical predator to man, because as we are the highest on the food chain, what kills us, or what's coming for us, is we don't have enough time. And this is what gets us into speaking about death and these things. I love this one, because the idea how physical and spiritual are different realms, we definitely kind of conflate the two. Okay, here we go. What does this mean? These realms affect each other. Okay, if I only go in right, which is why I use the definition of a right arm versus left arm here. It's like taking flight, and you need both. You're balancing to basically like two wings of a bird, if you would, in order to take flight. If we just had one side, it'd be very difficult to fly. And so the spiritual realm affects the physical realm, as well as the physical realm affects the spiritual realm. So it's very important. And you might have heard the old adage, as above, so below. So if this is true, that it does affect each other, then we have to realize then that if we focus on the death part and on grief, or on these things, we'll speak about grief specifically, that we are definitely connected only to one realm, which would then be the physical realm. Okay. And then we would then have to learn to begin to start with detachment and acceptance, the idea of the other realm coming into play to assist you in navigating and taking flight transitioning to the next realm, which is
So,
probably the
can I
main
ask a
point.
question?
Oh, all the time. Of
Yeah.
course, Kathy.
Okay.
Yes.
So the way you're
You're so
talking
funny.
about this, it seems that we are both physical and spiritual,
Oh, yes.
and both of the realms meet in us. So that for our experience of life, sometimes though, we concentrate, we don't have the balance in our concentration. Like we don't
Yes. Our focus. Yes.
mindful of we tend to either go one way, you're either spiritual, or the other way, and you're purely physical. But we our challenge is to balance those
That's right. That's
realms
right.
in us, in our body,
That's right.
in
That's
an
right.
embodied way.
Yes. Yes. We're a very extreme society, aren't we? Which is part of our human experience. I had a good. There's someone asking a question
Yeah,
there.
Joey's asking, can you provide an example of the spiritual realm affecting the physical realm?
Oh, very much so. So, for instance, in holistic protection, when I speak with my students and people in training with me, I ask them, did they put on their spiritual armor this morning before leaving the house? Sort of like a bulletproof vest, for most things. But did you put on your spiritual armor? Meaning, were you mindful this morning? Did you meditate this morning? Did you read, or listen to music that would give you the positivity that is necessary? How is your diet? Joey, a lot of these things we've talked about in our previous talks before, right, Kathy? And so this is why it's all leading up to this point. But you can refer back to a lot of those videos where we do give a little bit more examples of how exactly, again, and how does it affect the spiritual aspects affect your daily life. Another one would be simply that if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to be very cranky, I'm sure, heading into the workplace and into the world. How that, so rest and digest the parasympathetic nervous system, how that is important to your spiritual vitality and wellness. And if you don't get that, then it's going to offset the rest of your day, which then you're going to be, it just kind of continues down. Someone asks another question. I love these.
The
Okay, here we go.
physical, that's the physical affecting the spiritual. The spiritual affecting the physical.
Well, the spiritual is energy. Okay, the scientists from the beginning have defined what spiritual felt. The spirit is basically, which we're going to be getting into in a few more slides, of exactly what is spirit. Spirit is basically energy. Okay, and we're going to be handling that in a little bit further into our discussion. But someone else had a good question, I think, too,
Andrew
popped
asked,
up.
do you believe one of those realms will always control or influence the other realm?
Well, see, okay, so you have to, I love these questions. We could be here all day and I have really great responses. But the reality is that, first of all, we'd have to strike the word believe out of the conversation, because believe leaves room for doubt in polarity. And then certitude is another world. So we have to start looking at that. Believe is this in the physical realm, where certitude and things of this nature, which are also in these physical realms, then exist to get you into the spirit practices. So that's a good question, and we can definitely be having to tackle that later. But we're talking right now about this cycle of life right now. Let's go into that. And again, if you have questions, please keep these questions going. I will address them and get you these answers also off of this webinar as well. I'm open to that. What is death?
Address?
Oh, whatever, anything's fine. What is death? Okay, life cycle of death. Okay, why do I bring this in is to have this conversation with you. Is that for me, people go, do you believe in life after death? Or is there this understanding? Again, belief, right? For me, I know, okay? And I'm just going to use the logic for me. And again, if this works for you, then that's good, yeah? Okay? But for me, when I look at death, the idea that I'd have to first look at birth, right? Because of the polarity. For me to understand that there is death, I had to understand that there was a birth, right? Okay. So in this reality, then I look at it and go, like birth itself. We were all in some kind of a womb-like place. Yes? Yes. And in that womb, had faculties, we were whatever, but we didn't have a cognitive memory, right? From 0 to maybe 4, if you would. Maybe some earlier, but for me, I don't remember anything before that. Now, the idea that once I was, 9 months later, I came into this world, I was still connected by the umbilical cord, and at that point, severed. So then I was severed from the then host, which was my mother, right? Okay, we're going through this process, and let's just work with me in this story here. Okay, so then now that we are experiencing this life and I've been severed, I'm now into another place called Earth. All right, and I'm independent, but I'm still depending on my source for food, nourishment, what have you. That could be a metaphor for God, okay, at that point. But the idea is now I'm in this other realm. Now, in this realm, I'm also developing, okay? Now, this lifespan of development is not 9 months, but it may be 60, 70, who knows, huh? How long that might be. Now, we go into the idea of memory. I now have memories, okay? And now you might have heard as before I do transition that my life might have passed in front of my face, right? Well, that's yes, because the idea is to get rid of memory, okay? Grief equals memory, okay? I'm attached to the memory. And when people have death or have died in transition, they're fine. We're not fine here in the physical realm because we are connected to what? The memory and the experiences and the attachment of that person or whomever that may be that has transitioned on. And the idea that is then the attachment. And with that attachment of not wanting to let them go or to release them or maybe even forget, ooh, Lord forbid, yeah, would cause a lot of grief, okay, and in that situation. So but if you're in that process of experiencing, which I don't know if you have anyone who has, but I have experienced near-death experiences, these things where the idea is that it does really happen. The idea is that memory is no longer, there and relevant. It becomes the part where I have to learn to detach from the physical realm to prepare myself for the transition without attaching itself to the so-called physical realm. Yes? Okay. Now that, hold on one second, because we're almost there. Hold on. So now we go into this process of asking the question. The question now logically becomes, if I was in that process once before called the womb, then transitioned into this life form called Earth, how do I know I'm not going to transition into another? That would be a question, you see? That would be from a logic point of view. So therefore, that means there's a continuation and after this transition or to this physical, to this next one or to the next. That would be that's for me. And if that works for you, then that's great. But it's a wonderful logic question to ask yourself because you must have to look at that as far as death is concerned, that if you were experiencing one thing in one realm with no memory whatsoever, but you did exist, how do you know we're not in that process right now? All right. And that's what this kind of life cycle thing is about. It's about, oh, yes. And again, preparation. Why do people fear death? Is because, again, back to our earlier talks in holistic protection, the idea is that it's fear-based, right? So if it's fear, it's the lack of preparation. Why is preparation so important for death? It's very important. My mother, bless her heart, when she passed, did not prepare. I'm very honest with mine. I'm okay with talking about that, is that there was no will. There was no, you know what I'm saying? There was nothing there that the preparation, that's just business, right? That's the business part. But the preparation can also be in leaving messages to us as her children about how she would like to be, taken care of in her, in her body, her, what have you, all these things. You all understand what I'm referring to. So there's a preparation for death. And for me, I take it even deeper that for me, one of the purposes for life itself is preparation and practice. Yeah. And to living a life and to prepare myself in this life to do great works and to do good things and to feed myself with wellness and peace and those around me, and to be able to, again, to transition without getting into religion and different types of other things of how people might take into consideration of how they do it. Yeah.
Wow, it's a lot.
So it is a lot.
In the images, life contains both birth and death.
Oh, yes. We can't, it would be for me, I feel almost an imbalance if we do not celebrate death as we would celebrate life. It's an imbalance.
And then the other thing is, like, sometimes it feels like we're talking spiritually or metaphysically, but you can also take this life, death, decay, rebirth, life cycle idea and see that it happens with animals, with plants. It isn't totally a spiritual idea. It's that, the just in a very practical, tangible way, things, seeds are germinated, they they burst out, they have one form. And this goes to what you were saying before about there is no loss, like things just are absorbed, so that when it, quote unquote, it propagates and then it dies and it becomes part of the soil.
That's
So,
right. That's right. That's right.
So do we,
Yeah, right. And that's what I'm saying. I don't understand. That's why I don't understand loss at that point. I think loss and misplaced are two different things. Like, and I'm not saying this is not to be crass about death again. It's just that I celebrate death because I don't have the same understanding. I'm going home. I'm actually, I don't, and again, this is not a morbidity. I'm not trying to say I'm excited about it. I don't wish it on. It's just that when you, and this is just, again, being very real, when I had my near-death experience, there's no control. So then you have to realize the idea is that it's the ego that is continually trying to control each part of my life and facet. But then when you learn to surrender and submit, there's a certain peace that comes with it. And at that point, and surrender, these are all very spirit-based words that a lot of people have a very difficult time with because they want to control every facet of their life, which is unfortunately samsara, or grief and suffering, that I'm not willing to be a part of. Yeah.
When I had my near-death experience, it was experiencing myself, it was without ego. And as part of the oneness, like as it's hard even to talk about it because that's not the experience of life. Like, you travel with your ego all the time, like most people do. I do in my daily life. But I had an experience where I was me, but my ego wasn't there.
That's
Like,
right. You put it to rest, and that's what it's meant by laid to rest, because humans can't even rest on a daily basis with their wellness. Most of us are not sleeping. We're not breathing correctly. I mean, you have to realize we're in flight mode most of the time, so the idea of rest is very foreign to us. And so this is why we have a very difficult time with putting things aside, because we're continuously squeezing and holding on and controlling with that ego. So that's a very good point, Kathy. Yes, with the ego, for sure. In our control. What is spiritual vitality? Yeah. Why is it essential? Okay, good. Someone asked that earlier, right? About the spirit part, And so spirit in many different languages means the same thing, ki, chi, prana. I mean, it's like many different names for the Holy Spirit. I mean, there's so many names for energy that we can all understand is vitality towards just energy and power, and in one of the, I put ki there and chi, no, chi's not there, but in Chinese philosophy, it was taught that if there is no chi, which means energy, then there's no life. And I think that's just very important, because that the energy is what moves life. It's movement. Okay. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah, Kathy, that's a movement.
One of the things that helps me understand this also is, in psychology, it's a big question, like, how is mind different from brain? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so this experience of mind, you can reduce it to electrical whatever, but it's not the same experience. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I need to be in touch with my spirit. Like, if I experience my spirit, my energy, my vitality, and I understand it as something real, that I can do things to impact how much of it I have and how positive it is.
That's right.
That's what you're kind of saying, is if there's no chi, there's no life. But
that's right.
But if you have some chi, there is life. But the amount of chi you have, and whether it's blocked or whether it's flowing or whether it's, is within somewhat your control.
Oh,
right?
yes. Oh, for sure. It's another way of looking at it is like electricity, right?
Yeah.
So we have, wires and to control the flow of electricity, because if we didn't control electricity, we could burn ourselves, hurt ourselves, there's all types of things. And so the sun is the same way, and that's why I love the sun as we have to go get a sun, but too much sun, right, is not enough. It's how we utilize these things that give us, and that's why it's very important. It is your own independent journey. Again, because no one can tell you how, we can give you great advice and counsel, but it's really up to your self-realization and your self-knowledge about yourself to know how much sun I should have, how much this I should have. Should I eat more meat? Should I not eat meat? These are all subjective things that each person independently has to come into terms with to figure out how it's going to make their lives more vital, that brings more vitality, more energy to you. Okay, I can't do that for you. I can give you suggestions and these wonderful things, as we, in our practice that has worked since, beginning of time. And, we take these ancient practices that aren't new. You get what I'm saying? Because what we would say in the sacred is what's new isn't true, and what's true isn't new. And that the idea is that we just have to continue to listen to the ancient, the old ways. And the new is great too. The news just assists us with keeping those old ways and revisiting with them, because we need the old and the new. We need to integrate, because that's the cycle of death in the process, is the death and rebirth, and the death and rebirth. So learning these spiritual truths and insights connects us between them, because once we learn, and again, learning comes with surrendering and submission and rest. We can't learn if we're in a constant state of control, flight, fear, and these types of things, which is why a lot of people are very, how do we say, have a difficult time discussing these very challenging issues, because they become emotional. Okay, and emotions are great, but we're not to be tied to these emotions, which would then take us astray from peace. And so
when you're saying that, what it makes me think of, and tell me if I'm on the incorrect track, but when we ask people, how are you? How do you feel? It seems like I've always thought of that as like an emotional question. How am I feeling? But if you ask someone, how's your spirit today?
Ooh.
If you ask them, if you ask me, how's my spirit today? I could absolutely tell you whether I was dragging, whether I felt high energy or low energy, whether I was, if it was dampened. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I could.
Oh yes.
It's a different question, really.
That's right. And it's unfortunate, because it's not the fault of man. It's just that we have to become educated in the vocabulary, the vernacular of speaking in a spirit way versus just our limited way. You have to realize education is very important. So these are some of the reasons for why it's very difficult to broach these conversations, because it does take a certain level of you to learn to surrender. That does not take education. That just takes a willingness, and the willingness to get out of your own way, a willingness to submit, and a willingness to open yourself up to nature, because the greatest teacher is not in a classroom. Okay, the greatest teacher is in life, in nature. Okay, nature has taught us since the beginning of time, and will continue to do so as long as we don't destroy it, which would then be destroying ourselves. So this is why I joke and laugh about it, because it's funny. So the value in something is to protect it, which why we have to protect nature, right? Okay, we have to safeguard it. We have to learn that it is valuable. And this is why it's a holistic protection. A holistic protection is basically protecting your life, protecting and giving you the skills that are necessary to protect what is valuable and what is vital, which is why it's vitality, which is life. Inspiratus means to inhale, in spirit. In spirit means to just inhale. We don't even do that daily. Really, if you think about it, taking a conscious breath and letting it go. Okay, that is inspired in spirit. That means life. And when I consult a lot of artists and advise a lot of, interesting people who are very creative, and they talk about a writer's block, there is no such thing as a writer's block when you're in spirit. Because in that spirit realm is the divine creativity, which is eternal. So then there is a constant flow of creative force energy. It is if you're stuck in the physical realm, you're going to have very difficult times being your most creative without spirit. And that's when we talk about no chi, no life, which is basically death. So we're suffering right now in our society. Those who suffer the most are lacking spirit, which is the inspiratus spirit, which is to inhale. And again, I'll be speaking on these things a lot more in the future, but we have to realize, and I think it's coming up in a slide. We can go on to the next. But the idea is that there's a timeline. I think if you guys remembered, we talked about time being man's predator. Okay, because life and then there's death. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna get to that, but this one I obviously guess is in this category right now of what does it means? What does vitality mean? Well, I was in a hospital and they checked my vitals. Why did they do that? To see if I'm alive, okay, and to measure it, because in the physical realm it must be timed and measured. You see, so that we can then get ourselves to a homeostasis and to a balance. And then you become your own scientist. You have to do your self experiments to see what makes you balance, what gives you the vitality. Gratitude for loss. Now, this becomes, someone might look at it. For me, again, I am thankful for things that are very difficult and challenging. This is the only way we can become stronger. No struggle, no progress. Therefore, when I look at being gratitude, I am grateful for all things that come my way. I am grateful for even these things with COVID. We can find consciousness in all things. Okay, which is basically heightened levels of positivity if we choose to look at it. One of the great teachers said to me that if I wanted to look for shit, all I had to do was stick my head in the toilet. So therefore, if you want to just see or look for loss and you want to find yourself in that category, then this is why we say it's a choosing at that point. It's a choosing. Presence. What does the presence mean? It means being in the actual space of time measurement, not in the past, not in the future, but being in the moment of the present. And by living in the present, you are then vibrating frequency of presence. As a bodyguard, if I am thinking about something else other than being in the moment with my client, I am setting myself up for danger and exposure by not being mindful and present.
Wow.
By me being that way, I then create a presence around my client and myself, which then, because my client half the time isn't present, I'll tell you that. They're all over the place, which is why they hire a bodyguard, so that they can be watching over them and being mindful. Kathy, you're going to say something. You have that look.
Well, I just had a big wow moment, because presence is like a big, be here now. It always seemed kind of abstract to me, that I didn't. That sure, you have the past and you have the. Why is the present better than being in the past or the future? But you just, like, in the context of holistic protection and thinking of myself as my bodyguard.
That's right. You are your bodyguard.
Thinking of myself as trying to, keep myself safe, keep my spirit safe, keep my body safe.
Yes.
Then safety is also focusing in the present.
Oh, it's the only place. Safety. Okay, here we're going to go there. You done and did it. All right. The secret to my book that's coming is this. Again, we're talking about the time, and time is man's predator, right? Okay. So then therefore, ready? This is a big one. All right. Just give it away. Just give it away. Here we go. The past, as they say, is history. The future is unknown, the mystery. The gift, right? You've heard this before, is the present. That's just an adage, right? But the reality of how that works is that don't, if we connect ourselves to the past, we have depression. If I think about the unknown future, I have anxiety.
Yeah.
See, just right there, I gave you a mental breakdown from psychology, which doesn't go into this idea of the spirit realm, but I just gave it to you, which is the connection between the spirit realm and the actual science of psychology in the abstract, is that this timeline, this time thing that we have is being in the moment. Because the moment is the only place where there is peace.
Yes. So here's a question, which maybe other people are thinking as well. So you talked about preparation, which seems
Yes.
to be future oriented.
Okay.
And you talked about, and I feel like maybe this is mine, but I feel like there's also value in understanding what's happened in the past so that you can, make wiser choices going forward.
Exactly. And I like the way you said wise. Yes, because the wisdom is to not attach yourself to the past stories.
Okay.
It's your attachment to not going into the future. The attachment is going to bring you samsara. The attachment is going to make you crazy. The attachment is going to bring you grief. The attachment is what we, in a lot of different religions, is the devil, essentially. The attachments. And to letting go is what is really the peace. And so at this time of death, you must surrender. You must let go.
So if it's a discipline, and it's a discipline to remain in the present, because the present is gone in an instant, so it's like.
Yeah, but that's the best practice. I love it. Yes.
In the present, because it's not like you can't attach to the present because the present is always shifting,
That's right. That's the added, and that's kind of the whole the paradox. But that's why we have music. That's why we have art. That's why we have life. Life is death and birth it's happening right at the moment, constantly.
So
things are dying.
Is the spirit synonymous with consciousness?
Okay. Ooh, this Joey boy, you better see me after class. Now I'm just kidding. Causing trouble. Okay, so yes, because the soul, there's no consciousness. Now that's going to be a heavy one for most, or going to cause some things. But the spirit itself, yes, because the idea of consciousness is the idea of being mindful, right? And so this idea of consciousness is the action, right? And those actions and that we have in our lives and our daily practice is to bring about awareness, because consciousness in the world of in spirituality and holistic protection and in most of our martial arts or practices is awareness. Consciousness equals awareness. So the awareness is the light. How do I become aware? With the light. Okay, and that's just again metaphor for being seen, to be.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but it seems like
anytime.
But it seems like it's inextricably connected to spirit, but not necessarily a synonym for spirit. Like
no, synonym meaning that another word for. No, I would not. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't think spirit is another word for consciousness, although spirit and consciousness are connected.
Right. That's right. These are just because, yes, very good. Because again, it's like we don't want to get caught up in the semantics, but the idea is spirit, like soul, and like all these wonderful things are these wonderful words that can get us into they're our food. Okay.
Well, also here, wait. It's also like if we attach to them as concepts, then we're not in the moment, then we're not doing it, but they're kind of like all pointers to.
Yes, they're all signs. They're all signs. Thank God for road signs. Yes.
So direction instead of like, so you don't like grab it and attach to it, but just let it move you in the direction that.
That's right. You want to be an observer as far as this is concerned. Life for me is all about observation. Okay, and we have to be very careful about participating because again, it's the attachment. You get what I'm saying? And so by participating is the attachment. So yeah, being conscious is just being aware, and the more tools that you have to bring in yourself. This talk, this webinar, Be Strong Families. Kathy and all the people that are involved with this process are all conscious. and we're all being consciously putting this program together to create vitality. Do you see how it works? It's like a building block. So yes, that's why it's a loaded question, a very good question, but definitely not synonymous, but definitely a part of. Yeah. Let's talk about self-love. Of course, that's knowing, how do I become vital? For me, is I love myself, and it's very difficult for a lot of people to say that. When I talk with my students and, no, you're welcome, Joey. I keep asking good questions because this is what we're doing, is that we don't, enough people, the only way to GET is to ASK. And most people don't ask these very difficult questions, and they have a very difficult time finding these, people who could answer, or people to have, to engage with. That's why I love Be Strong Families, is because they're not afraid to challenge and afraid to be open and vulnerable from a organizational level to start dealing with making our strongs and ourselves, stronger. But let's talk about the love thing. When I ask people, do they love themselves? You'll be shocked. You would be shocked. I am shocked how people have a very difficult time saying, I love myself. And that's a very interesting thing, because knowing and love, this idea is that once we can understand, I've said this before, this is something that it's just, is personal to me, is that the question and the answer is love.
Right.
Okay. And when you're lost, okay, that means you did not go in the direction of love. You're now into the physical realms, many different understandings of other people's loves. Okay, we could get on that later.
So that's about how we tend to commodify love and make it into bring it only into the physical realm, and then
that's right. Waheguru.
As opposed, because I couldn't love myself in that way until I realized that I was love.
That's right. Love spiritually, because if you cannot love spiritually, this is why religion and why all these great things are so important. Okay, because they were there to talk and to teach us about how to love, and that's fine. And as long as you can get to that place, you will soon understand that the love that you have, when you talk about grief or loss or any of these things, it's, it's the loss of not having that love. But guess what? If you have love, then there is no loss. There is no loss. A person is there with me and is always going to be there, because I can feel the love in this physical realm from my mother, who is no longer with us.
He says, do you have any specific messages or advice for families when there is a death of a baby, like from miscarriage, stillbirth, SIDS?
Oh God, yes. The Great Spirit, I use God in the term of the Great Spirit or great energy, these types of things. And that, again, for me, there is no loss. And I keep saying this, is that we have to, first of all, this is a good one. And this, I won't tell you the names of people. I can't release my clients' names, unfortunately. I gotta catch myself with that. But the reality of it is that it's magic, and we have to use imagination, and that's a wonderful thing. They say that the gateway to enlightenment is through imagination, and that if you don't have imagination, then there's no way that you're going to be able to perceive the life after. Yes. So with that question, I'm going to take it in that regard, which is the advice that I would give is that they're not dead. You get what I'm saying? Because again, I don't understand the death concept as that. Is that they were born. Were they born? So people say happy birthday to me. I always joke with them. I don't really have a birthday because I was never born. So therefore I could never die. Oh, I like that one. You get what I'm saying? Because we're consciously constructed in the physical realm to think about my birth. And I'm also constructed to think about my death. But if we just that's just fine. But I'm going to focus on my eternal life, and be like, yo, this will be kind of fun. Let's start focusing on that. But we haven't done enough of that. So it's going to sound very weird and foreign, right? But we're easy to focus on death as the end. I'm sorry, but if there was a construct and an idea that there was a child that once was, even if you named it, okay, right? You gave it a name, you gave it a life, you were preparing yourself, right? Preparation, right? We did talk about that. So therefore it's alive. Therefore it's conscious. Therefore it's awareness. Therefore they're abound. Their energy, their spirit, their soul is here and present as long as you will it so. But if you don't, then that's on you as well. Yeah, it's all.
advices you would give, because the grieving is the same, whether it's a child, whether it's a parent, whether it's a husband, whether it's, what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
the loss, because it's all about what are you grieving? You're grieving your expectations for what the future would have been. You were grieving, the fact that you prepared for this and it's not happening the way that you wanted it to happen. You're grieving, so that, but
It's a lot of attachment. It's a lot of attachment. I'm just giving the other side because we already, right? Just like that. Thank you, Kathy, because that's exactly what we're talking about. So you're feeling the grief, the loss. So Kathy just broke that down, which is the attachment, right? So now we go into the other side. Let's go into the detachment world and we start working. How does that work though physically? How does that work? Well, there was I don't say that if you name the child, that child is alive. That child is there. That child has your imagination, your connection to you. Especially as a woman, I can't even begin. That's a whole nother topic of conversation, the double bubble, because you've carried this being. Your body was prepared. The Great Spirit gave you preparation for this life force, and that life force energy, soul energy, was in you before the actual seed. And oh my God, we can't even go there. It's a whole topic. It goes really into a lot of things, but I do not want to get off the train here. So creativity, alignment, see the creativity part of it, is vital. You get what I'm saying? Creativity creates vitality. Okay. The circle of it goes like this. The creator created. What did the creator create? The creator created creation. What? Yes, the creator created creation. What did the creator give his or her or its creation? Creativity. The creator created creation, giving it creativity, which is the spirit, which is vitality, spirit, to do what? To create. Therefore, the cycle is continuously happening. Everything works in cycle. So therefore, the creator created creation, giving it creativity in order for you to create. Therefore, each of us are responsible for creation. We are creating every day, which is vitality, which is life. And if you are lacking creativity in your job, you're going to hate your job, you're going to quit your job or whatever. It's going to cause you more pain. You get what I'm saying? So it's the individual expression. It is your creative spirit. It is how you address death. It's how you look at death. It is all the perspective of how you take it on. All right. Knowing pain is your attachment. We've gotten that one already. Focusing on pain. Oh, I like this one because Kathy and we got into this as we were preparing. Listen, this is a good one. Okay. What about pain? Pain. All right. Literally, I fell off my horse the other day. I was in the hospital. I had CT scans. I was in a lot of pain. Why was I in pain? Okay. Because I chose to focus on pain. You guys with me on that? Pain, where does pain exist? Okay. Pain is also in the future. Pain is also in the past. There is no pain in the moment. A baby falls and hits its head. What happened? Is it pain? Nope. The Great Spirit gave that child a protective field of energy, endorphins, releases throughout the body. It's natural morphine. Shock. Shock is not pain.
So are you saying when you were in the hospital in pain that you wouldn't have had pain if you were focused on God, Allah, Great Spirit?
I would have been in less pain. See, that's the thing. I don't remember. We're not going to go into these extremes because that's exactly what we talked about earlier, is this pendulum of no pain versus no. See, when I talk about war and peace and war, people go, I say there's not going to be war like this. Well, yeah, there's always going to be war, but the war is going to be on a different level. A war is going to be a bad look at someone or a bad word.
I can totally get that I'm going to make the pain worse if I focus on the pain.
Exactly.
And if I focus on God or I focus on something else and I focus, then I'm not going to feel as much pain.
Exactly. I'll give you a good example. When they wanted to give me when they were touching the actual spot where the pain was, they would poke somewhere else to deflect from me concentrating on that spot. Do you get what I'm saying? We do this every day. So this is why I think it's fascinating. You now have a choice.
When you get a COVID shot, they slap you like this because you won't know what like like you won't be attending
Right.
to the
To
needle.
that, exactly. They're taking your mind somewhere else. So in meditation, the focus, that's what our job is in meditation, is to learn to concentrate and to focus my mind so that there's no such thing. Is not going to be no pain. That'd be great. No pain means what? Death. Finite, completed life in the physical world. We are going to be in pain every day. Every day. Life is pain. So therefore, when I do this work, I have to understand that, oh, but it's going to be at what level there are pains. How much pain am I in today? Oh, and I look at the sign. I loved it when I was in the hospital, because every time they come to give me my IV check and everything, they'd ask me, how much pain am I in? Or I'm in. And I have to look at that little emoji, and I was trying to pick out which one. I love the emoji, by the way. It's so much better than having to talk to them when you're in pain. You just go 5 or that one, I love emojis. Thank God, whoever created the emojis, whoever. But anyway, but it was a very fascinating thing. So the idea is just that we do not want to focus, is what I'm saying. We don't want to attach ourselves to the actual pain. There's going to be pain. We're human. We're going through a human experience. And that is why it's so important. Pain is important. Can I tell you, remember I told you, just like I said, loss is important. Pain is important. If we didn't have pain, we would not experience pleasure. Ooh.
Well, and those people who don't have pain hurt themselves.
Well, that's another mental illness that I will not talk about.
So like, the people who, don't have nerve endings, or I don't know, their nerve system works differently. So they can put their hand on a hot stove. And
that's some kind of freaking,
but they still get burned,
Sure,
so
exactly.
It helps you protect yourself.
And that's what we're talking about.
Chat, like something that I read once, and I think it's a Buddhist saying, which is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
That's for sure. Amen to that. Thank you for that. That is amazing. That's right. Because pain is inevitable, and we are experiencing it. I'm just trying to give us more skills and tools and resources to try to manage the pain. You get what I'm saying? And to manage our experiences as we are on this journey called life and transitioning peacefully. And celebrate it. See how I don't want to go there, because again, I celebrate it. I want mine, and you should think of yours. Maybe I don't know, but I want a party, and I better be fun. Damn it, okay, and joyous, not this, other side of life, how people want to look at it. All right, peace is always accessible. Yes, okay. Expectations. That's right. Basically, get out of your own way. We've heard this before, but we use it even when it comes to safeguarding. It's very difficult for me to safeguard my clients when they are in the way. I prefer them out the way. That means they're able to be protected. But if they're not, and they don't want to relinquish it's not a control, it's a submission, a surrendering to understanding. You get what I'm saying? The sacrificing, to sacrificing the important for the most important, And that's important. That's funny. Okay. Anyway, holistic protection, safeguarding the soul. So how do basically the soul is in the inside, the body is the extremities, and so we're just trying to safeguard it. We're just trying to protect it as we would protect anything. But again, the goal of my work, we put this on there, is when I tell my clients, I'm basically protecting myself, protecting them from themselves, not from Al Qaeda, not from, all these different things that are out there trying to hurt them. But the idea is that basically, again, trying to protect them from themselves. Life-saving techniques are practicing that which promotes vitality. Once again, and these are a lot of things we've already discussed in the slides and previously. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. We're coming. Next slide, Andrew.
Okay. This is what I call the curse. I like to call it a curse, actually, because it's funny. What people talk about a curse is, and a curse for me is just knowing. And then once you know, you can't unknow a thing. You wish you could. You wish you could be like, oh, I'm not, we try to fake ourselves out. And what I mean by that is, you're going to die. I'm just keeping it real. I remember when I told the vice president of Ghana that, and I won't tell you which one, but I was on an assignment, and it was just simply, I didn't have any, I couldn't give him a tank. I couldn't, give him a Wonder Woman force field that's going to stop him from being whatever. My simple truth is that he's going to die, that we're all going to die. And it's now a question of how, it's a question of when, and it's a question that we are needing to discuss and to have open communication and talk about and be okay with it. Because once you know, and once you accept and surrender, and once you detach, and once you find that peace, it's a wonderful place to be, and you don't want to leave it. And because once you know, then the growth happens. That's why we put, once you know, you got to grow, because once you know, there's a responsibility and an accountability. And if we don't, and if we're not accountable, and we're not taking responsibility, what we resist will persist, and we're going to injure ourselves and potentially hurt and harm ourselves and not protect our loved ones and ourselves.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. This was awesome. I really appreciate you and your wisdom and your teaching.
Waheguru.
Thank you for sharing them with us.
Thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you everybody for being here. And just tomorrow we started a conversation on spiritual vitality and navigating trauma and loss last week, and we got halfway through, and you all requested that we do a part 2. So we're doing that tomorrow. And on Thursday, Sarita will be here holding space for navigating grief and loss post-pandemic. And both of these sessions, as well as the Grief Compass Cafe, are going to be based on questions that come out of our new Grief Compass Navigating Trauma and Loss Cafe deck. And then next week, we start with family vitality. So we look forward to seeing you next time, whenever next time is for you. And have a great rest of your